The story began not with the stone, but with laughter. A crowd on a snowy street, pointing up the hill.
Look, it's the troglodyte.
Daniel Reeves ignored the jeers. His dog Gideon pressed close as he walked toward the hardware store. Inside the hardware store, Frank Harlan saw him coming and his face hardened into a mask of contempt.
I ain't selling you nothing, Reeves. You are wasting good lumber on a grave.
Stone doesn't need his permission to hold heat.
A rock can't keep you warm, fool. You'll freeze before Christmas.
Daniel didn't answer. He turned and walked out, Gideon at his heels, the laughter chasing him up the frozen road. By the time he reached the split boulder, the day was fading. The half-finished wall waited like an accusation. He picked up his hammer. The cold steel was heavier than any insult. Inside the split boulder, Daniel struck a match and lit the lantern. The curved stone walls caught the glow, not warm yet, but promising. He pressed his palm flat against the stone by the cleft. A faint warmth lingered, the last gift of a pale December sun.
Heat moves slow through stone. Gideon, it soaks in all day, then breathes it back at night.
Gideon tilted his head, uncomprehending but loyal, his thick tail sweeping the frozen stone floor. Then his eyes fell on the small framed photograph on the stone shelf, the only thing he'd carried out of the auction.
She would have called me crazy too, but she would have understood.
He remembered the auctioneer's voice, the farm sold piece by piece, the wagon loaded with the last splinters of a life now gone.
Stone doesn't rot. It doesn't burn. It doesn't leave.
He set the photograph back on its shelf and picked up his hammer, the steel no longer heavy, but an extension of purpose.
We're not building a house, Gideon. We're finishing what the ice started 10,000 years ago.
By dawn the next day, Daniel was already deep in the cleft, wrestling a heavy oak beam into place against the raw stone. He chiseled notches into the living rock, each hammer blow echoing down the mountainside like a declaration.
The frame has to lock into the stone. No gaps, not even a finger's width. Cold ain't the killer. Gideon, moving air is. It only needs one crack to steal the heat right out of your blood.
He worked oakum into every seam, then packed mud and moss like a mason laying mortar between the stones of a fortress. Gideon lay by the half-built door, his eyes tracking every movement, his thick fur already dusted with sawdust. By late afternoon, the wall stood, a solid plank barrier, door frame set, the cleft now a room, but it was still porous. Snow began to fall as he stepped outside to survey his work, tiny dry flakes at first, tasting of iron and distance.
Winter's early this year. I've got maybe 2 days to seal it all, or the wind will make a flute of this place. Come on, boy. We ain't done yet. Not by a long shot.
The fourth morning brought no mercy. Leo Tucker and 2 others climbed the snowy slope, their laughter sharper than the wind.
Hey, cave dweller. You got a fire in there, or are you hoping the moss keeps you warm?
They pounded the door and hooted like beasts. Inside, Daniel kept sawing, his jaw set like the granite around him.
Let 'em wear themselves out. Stone doesn't listen to gossip.
The jeers faded with the afternoon light. Then a softer knock came, and a familiar voice.
Daniel, it's Mary Selwood. I am not here to laugh.
Daniel opened the door. She held out a thick wool blanket, her eyes scanning the still unfinished wall with open worry.
The mountain's a hard teacher. I've seen it bury better men than you. Please, take this and think again. I thank you, Mary, but I've already done my thinking. The stone won't let me down.
After she left, he drove the last chinking into the top seam and wrestled the cast iron stove into place. The match caught, and flame filled the narrow stone room for the first time. The fire had died to embers, but the stone held. Outside, the pine needles grew a skin of ice.
Slept warm. The rock gave back what the day put in.
He stepped out to read the thermometer nailed to a pine. 12 degrees. Inside, the boulder held at 48.
12 degrees, Gideon. And I ain't shivering.
In town, Frank Harlan looked up from his ledger and sneered. Still alive? That crypt of yours must be insulating with your own stink.
I said you'd freeze, but I didn't figure you'd pickle yourself first.
One warm night don't mean a warm winter, Daniel. The mountain plays long games. I am not betting on one night, Mary. I am betting on 10,000 years of stone.
He paid for the kerosene and walked out. The cold air bit deeper, but the laughter behind him meant nothing now.
Let them laugh. The stone doesn't care, and soon, neither will they.
Leo Tucker was waiting at the crossroads, a wicked grin that cut through the cold.
I hear that rock of yours sings at night. That's the granite splitting, ready to crush you in your sleep.
By noon, the story had crawled through every frosted window in town. The madman's Boulder was a loaded trap.
They'd rather believe a ghost story than a fact.
That night, he let the stove die. He timed the stone's slow surrender. Hour after hour, the walls held their warmth.
6 hours, Gideon. The rock remembers like an old elephant.
He carried the numbers to Mary's store, but her face was shadowed by the same rumor that had seized the rest.
I hear it too, Daniel. The cold can shear a stone in two. It's safer in a cabin. Come down before it's too late.
Outside, the sky had bruised to a color he couldn't name, pale green at the seam like a wound before the bleeding starts.
Storm's coming, the kind that buries everything.
That night, the radio crackled with the forecast. A superstorm, temperatures dropping to 40 below, winds that would strip the skin off a man.
40 below. Gideon, they won't survive it in their pine boxes.
By morning, the town was a frenzy of hammers and shutters. Mary's store emptied of canned goods in an hour.
Let the wind howl. My stove's worth more than all the rock on this mountain.
Daniel walked into the chaos and spoke the only truth he knew. That stone could save them if they'd listen.
Save us? That tomb's more likely to save us the trouble of burying you.
Mary Selwood stood apart, her hands wringing her apron, but no words came. The crowd's laughter smothered her caution. He didn't argue. He turned and walked back up the trail, the weight of every life they wouldn't save pressing on his shoulders. Back at the boulder, he sealed every seam until his fingers bled. He stacked firewood to the ceiling and checked the stone for cracks that weren't there.
We'll be ready, Gideon. The stone won't fail, and neither will we.
The first warning came not from the sky, but from the silence. The wind stopped dead, and the air grew heavy as iron. He climbed the ladder and jammed damp moss into the last fingernail gap. Then the bar across the door. Then the wind hit. Not a gust, but a solid wall. The boulder shuddered, and the timbers groaned.
There it is. Now we see what 1,000 tons of granite is worth.
Outside, the wind screamed like a wounded animal. Inside, not a draft, not a flicker of the lantern flame.
Easy, Gideon. The stone's holding. Can you feel it? It's not letting go.
He pressed his palm to the granite. Already, the stove's heat was soaking into the wall, spreading slow and deep.
6 hours of stored warmth. That's how we beat the wind, just outlasted.
Through the small window, the world had become a white howling night, but inside the silence was so complete he could hear his own heartbeat.
We're in the rock now, Gideon. The storm can't follow.
Daniel slept in fragments, each waking a ritual. Feed the stove, press his hand to the stone, listen to the wind's fury outside.
Still warm. The wall's alive, breathing back what we gave it.
He cracked the door at dawn. The thermometer nailed to the pine read 35 below. Inside, his breath barely clouded, 58 degrees and holding.
58 degrees, Gideon. That's warmer than most parlors in town, and we're inside a rock.
In town, Leo Tucker's shack had already lost the fight. Frost spiderwebbed the walls, and his stove glowed a feeble red against the devouring cold.
Can't feel my toes, but I won't give that rock man the satisfaction.
Frank Harlan's store was a sieve. A cracked window let the wind carve through, and his prized stove gulped wood without mercy, the room still bleeding warmth.
Should have bought better windows, but I ain't crawling to that cave. Not yet.
Back in the boulder, Daniel poured his coffee slow and watched the steam rise. a simple luxury the storm could not touch. Gideon gnawed a strip of bacon by the stove.
We'll check on them when the wind eases. Maybe then they'll listen.
By midday on the second day, the storm found new teeth. A roof in town crumpled under the snow, and panic spread like frost on glass. The front window of her store gave way with a crack. The stove coughed its last, and the cold poured in like a silent flood.
I should have listened to Daniel. That rock might be the only place warm enough to keep a soul alive.
She wrapped herself in everything she owned and stepped into the white fury. The boulder was a faint shape half a mile uphill, her only hope. By the time her frozen knuckles hit the timber door, she had no voice left. The wind stole her screams, but she pounded until dark spots bloomed. The door swung open. A wall of heat rolled out, and Daniel's strong arm pulled her from the jaws of the storm into glowing stone silence.
Dear God, it's so warm. How is the stone so warm? I'm sorry, Daniel. I should have believed you. The mountain almost took me for a fool. You're here now, Mary. That's what counts. Rest by the stove. Gideon, give her room.
And so the rock house got its first convert, not by argument, but by the simple, undeniable mercy of stone that remembered the sun. Hours after Mary collapsed by the stove, a frantic pounding rattled the door. More desperate, more terrified than before. Leo Tucker stumbled in, his knitted cap frozen to his scalp, the mockery stripped clean from his face. His eyes fell on Mary, and something inside him cracked.
The shack's gone. The roof just folded. I had nowhere else. Get in. Close the door. There's room for anyone willing to share the stone's warmth.
They came in waves after that. A logger with frost-black fingers, a family of 4 dragging a half-frozen child. Their pine boxes surrendered to the blizzard.
Press your backs against the stone. It's not cold. Feel it. The rock's been holding the fire's heat all day.
It's true. The rock is warmer than my shack ever was. I called him a fool.
They traded fragments of the town's ruin, collapsed roofs, frozen pipes, and a stubborn voice still echoing from the hardware store.
Frank Harlan wouldn't leave his store. Not even when the windows shattered around him.
The boulder hummed with quiet tension, a lifeboat of stone and fire in a sea of killing cold, anchored by one man who still listened for a knock that hadn't come.
Daniel, Frank's still out there. He's proud and stupid, but he's dying. You can't leave him.
He laughed at you. He refused you, nails. Let him feel the cold he said you couldn't beat.
The stone didn't ask who owned it before it held heat. It just did.
He looked at the curved granite that had taken them all in. No judgment, no memory of the laughter, and his mind was made.
I am going. Someone holds the door while I am gone. Gideon stays here with you. Daniel, no. The wind is 40 below. You'll die out there before you reach the store. I know the wind. I know the stone. I know the path. I won't be long.
He looped a thick rope around his waist, knotted it to the iron bar by the door, and pulled his hood low over his eyes.
Guard them, Gideon. I'll be back.
The door cracked open, and the blizzard swallowed him whole. The rope went taut, then vanished into the white fury. Daniel fought the wind at a 45-degree angle, each step a plunge into liquid ice. The rope was his only thread back to the stone.
Can't see 3 feet. If the rope snaps, Frank and I are both dead.
Then a shape emerged from the white. Gideon, muzzle coated in ice, the rope clenched in his teeth, refusing to be left behind.
Gideon, you stubborn brute. All right, we go together.
At the store, the door hung splintered. Inside, Frank lay unconscious, half buried in drifting snow, his stove long dead, his skin the color of porcelain.
Not dead yet. Come on, Frank. Not today.
He dragged Frank to the broken door and lashed the rope around the man's chest. The return journey would be against the wind's full killing weight. They crawled on hands and knees into the blizzard, Gideon pulling the rope taut ahead, Daniel dragging Frank's dead weight an inch at a time.
Keep pulling, Gideon. We're halfway. The stone's waiting.
The white blotted out everything, but the rope never slackened. Beneath him, Frank's breath came shallow, but it came. The door burst inward, and a wave of icy air rushed in. Then hands reached out, pulling Daniel, Frank, and Gideon across the threshold like a catch of sinking men.
Get him by the stone. The wall is warm. Put his back against the granite.
They stripped his frozen coat and pressed him to the granite. Mary wrapped hot stones in cloth and laid them around his chest.
Keep his head low, the blood still moving. Give him time, the stone will do the rest.
Hours bled together. The storm outside never eased, but inside the boulder, the only sound was the crackle of the stove and the shallow rasp of Frank's breath. Then a shudder ran through the big man. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then locked on the face above him, Daniel's face.
You came.
Daniel didn't answer. He just pulled the blanket higher and let the stone wall behind Frank speak for him. Steady heat, no triumph.
He's alive. You did it, Daniel. You brought him back from the dead.
Outside, the blizzard shrieked on. Inside, the boulder held them, the entire town now gathered in a wound of ancient rock that had never asked a single question. The third morning brought no mercy. 42 below, and a wind that peeled layers of snow off the mountain face. Inside the boulder, they rationed hardtack and shared a single kettle of water.
Sit against the stone. Not just to warm your backs, to feel what 6 hours of fire leaves in the granite. It's still holding.
Frank watched from his blanket cocoon, pale, weak, but alive. He hadn't spoken since those 2 words, but his eyes followed Daniel with a different weight.
I told him his rock was a crypt. I refused him nails, and he still walked back into that storm for me. This rock house of his, it's the only reason any of us are still breathing. I was wrong, and I owe him my life.
I called him a troglodyte. I said his tomb would crush him. He was right about the stone all along.
Stone doesn't hold a grudge. It just does what it's done since the ice carved this cleft. It holds the heat and lets the wind pass by. We'll make it through this. Because of you, Daniel. Because you listened to the stone when none of us would.
Outside, the storm never paused. But inside that ancient wound of granite, the bitter taste of mockery had turned to something else, a shared warmth that no wind could strip away. The food was low, the woodpile shrinking, and beyond the stone, the mountain still held its breath for the final blow. But the people inside had begun to hold on to each other, and that was a kind of fuel the blizzard couldn't freeze. The 4th morning, the wind died so suddenly the silence felt like a blow. Daniel pressed his ear to the cold stone and heard nothing but his own pulse.
It's over. The storm's spent. We dig out now. Everyone who can hold a shovel.
They dug through the drift, sealing the door with frozen hands and the broken handle of a shovel, emerging into a world of blinding sun and utter devastation. The boulder stood untouched, steam curling from its chimney, while below, the town looked like a cemetery of splintered wood and buried roofs.
My store, the roof's gone. Yours too, Frank. All that's left standing is the rock.
Frank stared at his hardware store. The roof caved in, windows buried, his prized stove a cold black shape under the snow. For a long moment he said nothing.
I would have died in there. My stove was a monument to pride. You knew the stone would hold, didn't you? Stone holds heat. It always has, since the first cave.
He said it not as a boast, but as a simple fact, and for the first time, every ear around him was open. They stood there, a circle of survivors in the snow, the split boulder rising behind them like a monument older than any of their arguments. That afternoon, Frank Harlan called every survivor to the snow-cleared square. They came wrapped in blankets, still carrying the cold of their ruin.
I refused a man nails because I thought he was building his own coffin, but that coffin kept us all alive. Daniel Reeves walked into a killing storm to drag me out. The rock house never failed. I was wrong, and I asked him to teach us what he knows.
Daniel stepped forward, his clothes still stiff with frozen salt. He looked more comfortable with a hammer than a crowd.
The split boulder was a home half built. Just had to wall the cleft and give it heat. Stone soaks up warmth, slow, and gives it back slow. Same physics a cave uses. That's all. We'll rebuild with stone. Every new roof will have a stone wall. You've shown us it's better than any promise.
By the next morning, Frank and Daniel were already stacking the first stones of a new storage shed, their hammers striking in unison. Within weeks, other stone shelters rose on the slope, humble copies of the split boulder that had held them when nothing else would, and the whole town finally understood what Daniel had known from the start. A split boulder was a home already half built, and stone has sheltered humanity since the beginning. Winter broke slowly, then all at once, the snow retreated and the first green shoots pushed through the mud around the new stone foundations.
Never thought I'd be laying stone next to you, Reeves. Feels right.
Mary came up the path with a basket of bread and salted fish, her smile no longer shadowed by worry.
She'd have liked this porch, somewhere to sit when the sun came.
This porch will hold a man's weight until the next ice age. The stone doesn't give.
The whole town's changed. Even Leo's building a stone hearth. You started something, Daniel.
And Gideon chased melting snowflakes across the new stone yard, barking at the sun. Below, the valley was dotted with pale smoke rising from fledgling stone cabins, each one a promise against the next storm.
Stone doesn't need us. It's been here before us, and it'll be here after.
He looked at the split boulder, now ringed with a proper porch and wild flowers, and it finally felt like a home. Years passed. Each new winter, the split boulder glowed warm, while the valley's stone cabins echoed its stubborn lesson. A small pine plaque by the timber door read, "Reeves Stone Refuge," built on the fact that stone remembers heat. The valley now held a dozen solid stone shelters, each a lesson the killing storm had burned into the town's memory. Gideon was old now, muzzle gray, but he still claimed the stone porch every morning as his watch.
You and this rock. You kept us all alive when nothing else would.
Inside, the stove never went cold, and the curved granite walls gave back the heat long after the fire had fallen to embers. The photograph on the shelf had not changed, a woman smiling into the room, as if she, too, had always trusted the stone. Stone has sheltered humanity since the first cave. This split boulder was just the latest proof, and the world's oldest promise. On the coldest nights, if you stood close to the stone, you could still feel the memory of every fire that ever warmed it. The rock house had taught a town what Daniel Reeves knew from the start. A split boulder was a home already half built, and laughter never kept anyone warm. The winter wind still howled around the split boulder, but the ancient rock never flinched, never gave. It scoured the granite face, probing every seam, every crevice, hunting for a weakness. None existed. The oakum and mud had long since fused with the stone, sealing the cleft as tight as granite. Inside, the stove's embers glowed steady, and the walls radiated the stored heat of the sun. Gideon, an old dog now with a white muzzle, slept by the door, his dreams full of deep snow and warmer days. The photograph on the shelf still there. A woman who would have understood. The mountain didn't care about laughter. It only cared whether the wind could find a way in. And in that split boulder, the wind never could. So the night passed into the winter darkness, and the rock held its warmth as it had since the ice carved it. Morning came clear, the sun striking the frozen stone, and the split boulder answered with a slow release of overnight warmth. Daniel stepped onto the stone porch, Gideon rising stiffly to follow. An old dog on an old stone. From the doorway, the valley below showed a map of stone roofs and chimney smoke, a town reborn in granite. He knelt and carved his name into the rock beside the door. Not for fame, but for the record. D. Reeves, 1890. The chisel echoed, a small sound against the mountain's silence, but it would last as long as the rock. Gideon lay across the threshold, one paw on the warm stone, one inside, guarding both worlds. Inside, the photograph still watched the room, and the stove still breathed. The stone didn't need a plaque to prove its worth, but the sign by the door read, Reeves Stone Refuge. On the coldest days, anyone walking by could feel the heat radiating from the cleft, proof that laughter meant nothing against the laws of physics. The split boulder stood, as it would for 10,000 more winters, a home already half built by the ice, finished by a man who listened to stone. The decades smoothed the edges of the carved name, but couldn't erase it. The boulder kept its heat and its silence. One clear morning, a hiker in a bright jacket stopped on the slope and stared at the improbable timber door set into the cleft. The small pine plaque beside the door was weather-beaten, but legible. Reeves Stone Refuge, built on the fact that stone remembers heat. The hiker pressed a hand flat against the sun-warmed granite and smiled, understanding without a single spoken word. No museum needed. The rock itself was the exhibit, and its lesson was free to anyone willing to touch it. The hiker left no trace, just footprints that the next snow would erase, but the split boulder remained. In the deepest cold, the stone still held the memory of fires long gone and the stubborn work of a man who trusted physics over ridicule. Daniel Reeves was gone, and Gideon had long since joined the mountain soil, but their home remained, a split in the ice's work, finished by human hands. And every winter after, when the wind screamed and the mercury vanished, the rock house gave back what the sun had loaned it, asking nothing in return, because that's what stone does. It holds what it's given. And when the cold comes, it gives it back.